The land now known as Libya has one of the oldest human histories on Earth. Long before modern borders existed, ancient tribes, merchants, warriors, and empires crossed its deserts and settled along the Mediterranean coast. Libya became a meeting point between Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, shaping a history filled with conquest, trade, religion, and survival. Thousands of years ago, prehistoric people lived near green valleys and lakes that once covered parts of the Sahara Desert. Rock paintings discovered deep in the Libyan desert show hunters, animals, and ancient communities living in areas that are now dry wastelands. Back then, the Sahara was not an endless sea of sand. It was fertile land filled with rivers, grasslands, elephants, giraffes, and cattle. As the climate changed, many tribes moved toward the Mediterranean coastline. These early Libyan tribes became known to neighboring civilizations such as the ancient Egyptians. Egyptian records described fierce desert warriors called the Libu people. Historians believe the name Libya originated from these tribes. Around the first millennium BCE, powerful seafaring traders called the Phoenicians arrived from the eastern Mediterranean. They established trading settlements along the North African coast. One of the most important Phoenician cities was Carthage, located in present-day Tunisia. Carthage soon expanded its influence across western Libya, controlling trade routes and coastal towns. At the same time, Greek settlers arrived in eastern Libya. Around 631 BCE, Greeks from the island of Thera founded the city of Cyrene. This region became known as Cyrenaica. Cyrene quickly grew into one of the richest Greek colonies in the Mediterranean world. The city became famous for philosophy, agriculture, medicine, and learning. Greek temples, theaters, and statues transformed the Libyan coast into a center of classical civilization. The Greeks cultivated a valuable plant called silphium, used as medicine and spice throughout the ancient world. The plant became so important that it appeared on Cyrene's coins. Wealth flowed into the city, attracting scholars and traders from distant lands. However, prosperity also brought conflict. Rivalries between Greek cities, local tribes, and neighboring powers created instability. Meanwhile, Carthage continued growing stronger in western North Africa. Eventually, the great struggle between Carthage and the rising Roman Republic changed Libya forever. The Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage shook the Mediterranean world. After years of brutal warfare, Rome defeated Carthage in 146 BC. Roman influence gradually spread across Libya. Roman armies occupied coastal cities, built roads, aqueducts, and massive public buildings. Under Roman rule, Libya entered a period of enormous development. Cities such as Leptis Magna became architectural wonders. The Roman Emperor Septimius Severus, born in Leptis Magna, transformed the city into one of the grandest urban centers in Africa. Huge amphitheaters, markets, baths, and marble streets demonstrated Roman power and wealth. Trade flourished across the empire. Libya exported olive oil, grain, and livestock to Rome. Caravans crossed the Sahara carrying gold, salt, ivory, and enslaved people from sub-Saharan Africa. Roman soldiers guarded desert frontiers while merchants connected Africa to Europe and the Middle East. Yet the Roman Empire slowly weakened. Political chaos, invasions, and economic decline damaged Roman control. In the 5th century CE, Germanic Vandals invaded North Africa and seized Libyan territories. Later, the Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, reconquered the region. Byzantine rule restored some order, but Libya never fully regained the prosperity of the Roman Golden Age. Heavy taxation, religious disputes, and declining trade created hardship among local populations. Then, during the 7th century, a powerful new force emerged from the Arabian Peninsula, Islam. Arab Muslim armies swept across North Africa with incredible speed. By around 642 CE, Muslim forces entered Libya, bringing the Arabic language and Islamic faith. Many local tribes gradually converted to Islam, transforming Libya's identity forever. Islam unified much of North Africa culturally and spiritually. Arabic became dominant, and Libya became connected to the expanding Islamic world stretching from Spain to Central Asia. coastal cities revived through trade, while Islamic scholars and merchants spread new ideas across the region. But Libya's geography made centralized rule difficult. Vast deserts separated communities, and tribal loyalties remained strong. Different dynasties controlled Libya over the centuries, including the Umayyads, Abbasids, Fatimids, and Ottomans. Despite changing rulers, tribal culture and desert traditions remained deeply important. As centuries passed, Libya became a crossroads for trade caravans, Islamic scholarship, and military campaigns. Yet its greatest struggles were still to come. Foreign invasions, colonial ambitions, and brutal wars would reshape the country once again. For centuries, Libya remained divided between tribal regions, coastal cities, and desert communities. Although Islamic dynasties claimed authority over the land, real control often depended on tribal alliances and local leaders. The harsh geography of Libya made it difficult for any empire to completely dominate the region. By the 16th century, a new superpower arrived in North Africa, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans were one of the most powerful Islamic empires in history, ruling territories across the Middle East, Southeastern Europe, and North Africa. In 1551, Ottoman forces captured Tripoli from the Knights of St. John, who had previously controlled the city. Libya officially became part of the Ottoman Empire. Under Ottoman rule, Libya was divided into three main regions: Tripolitania in the west, Cyrenaica in the east, and Fezzan in the south. Even though the Ottomans claimed authority, much of Libya remained semi-independent. Tribal chiefs still held enormous power in the deserts and rural areas. Tripoli became an important Mediterranean port under Ottoman administration. Trade expanded between Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. Caravan routes crossing the Sahara brought gold, salt, slaves, and other goods into Libyan markets. Coastal cities became centers of commerce and Islamic learning. During the 18th century, the Karamanli dynasty rose to power in Tripoli. Founded by Ahmed Karamanli, the family ruled Libya almost independently while still recognizing Ottoman authority. The Karamanlis strengthened Libya's economy through trade and naval power. However, piracy also became central to Libya's economy during this period. Barbary corsairs operating from Tripoli attacked European and American ships across the Mediterranean. Captured sailors were often held for ransom or sold into slavery. Western nations feared the North African pirate states, including Tripoli. One of the most famous conflicts involving Libya during this era was the First Barbary War between Tripoli and the young United States. In the early 1800s, American merchant ships were repeatedly attacked by pirates demanding tribute payments. Refusing to continue paying, the United States sent warships to confront Tripoli. The conflict became one of America's first overseas wars. Although relatively small, it symbolized growing Western military involvement in North Africa. By the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire itself was weakening. European powers were rapidly expanding their colonial empires across Africa. Britain occupied Egypt, France conquered Algeria and Tunisia, and Italy began looking for colonies of its own. Italy was a newly unified nation seeking prestige and overseas territory. Libya appeared vulnerable and strategically valuable. Italian politicians described Libya as the fourth shore of Italy and dreamed of turning it into a colonial settlement. In 1911, Italy declared war on the Ottoman Empire and invaded Libya. The Italian invasion marked the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in Libyan history. Italian warships bombarded coastal cities, while troops landed in Tripoli and other ports. The Ottoman Empire, already weak and facing problems elsewhere, could not effectively defend Libya. In 1912, the Ottomans officially surrendered Libya to Italy. But the Libyan people refused to accept foreign occupation. Resistance fighters from tribes across the country launched guerrilla warfare against Italian forces. In Cyrenaica, a powerful Islamic movement called the Senussi Order became the heart of resistance. The Senussi combined religious leadership with military organization and inspired thousands to fight the Italians. One of the greatest heroes of Libyan resistance was Omar Mukhtar. Born in Cyrenaica, Omar Mukhtar was a respected teacher and tribal leader who became commander of the anti-Italian resistance. Despite being older and lacking modern weapons, he organized highly effective guerrilla attacks against Italian troops. For years, Italian forces struggled to defeat Libyan fighters. The harsh deserts helped the resistance survive, while local tribes supported the rebels with food, shelter, and intelligence. However, in the 1920s, Italy's fascist dictator Benito Mussolini intensified the colonization campaign. Fascist authorities aimed to crush Libyan resistance completely and transform Libya into an Italian settler colony. The Italian military used brutal tactics. Entire villages were destroyed. Thousands of Libyans were forced into concentration camps surrounded by barbed wire in the desert. Livestock was confiscated, wells were poisoned, and mass executions became common. Historians estimate that tens of thousands of Libyans died from starvation, disease, executions, and forced displacement during Italian rule. Some estimates suggest nearly half the population of Cyrenaica perished. In 1931, Italian forces finally captured Omar Mukhtar after years of resistance. He was publicly executed by hanging before thousands of Libyans in an attempt to break the spirit of rebellion. Instead, Omar Mukhtar became a legendary symbol of resistance and national pride. To this day, he remains one of Libya's most respected historical figures. Italy tightened control over Libya during the 1930s. Roads, railways, and new settlements were built for Italian colonists. Thousands of Italians moved into Libya, especially around Tripoli and Benghazi. The fascist government tried to erase Libyan identity and replace it with Italian culture. But global events soon changed everything again. As World War II erupted, Libya became a major battlefield between Axis and Allied forces. Massive tank battles would soon rage across the deserts of North Africa, bringing destruction and chaos to the country once more. During World War II, Libya became one of the most important battlefields in North Africa. The country, occupied by fascist Italy, turned into a war zone where massive armies fought for control of the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Italian dictator Benito Mussolini joined forces with Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler. Libya became a strategic base for Axis operations against British-controlled Egypt and the Suez Canal. In 1940, Italian forces launched an invasion of Egypt from Libya. At first, the attack seemed promising, but British and Commonwealth troops quickly pushed the Italians back. The British captured thousands of Italian soldiers and advanced deep into Libyan territory. To prevent total collapse, Germany sent the famous Africa Corps under General Erwin Rommel. Rommel became known as the Desert Fox because of his aggressive tactics and military skill. The deserts of Libya soon witnessed enormous tank battles, air raids, and brutal fighting. Cities such as Tobruk, Benghazi, and Tripoli repeatedly changed hands between Axis and Allied forces. Civilians suffered from bombings, food shortages, and destruction. One of the most famous battles was the Siege of Tobruk, where Allied forces resisted German and Italian attacks for months. Later, the Second Battle of El Alamein in neighboring Egypt became a turning point in the war. British forces under General Bernard Montgomery defeated Rommel's army and pushed Axis troops westward. By 1943, Allied forces had fully captured Libya. Italian colonial rule collapsed forever. After the war, Libya was divided under British and French administration. Britain controlled Tripolitania and Cyrenaica, while France occupied Fezzan in the south. The future of Libya became uncertain. Some powers wanted to divide the territory permanently, while others debated international control. However, Libyan nationalist movements demanded independence. The Senussi religious movement, which had resisted Italian occupation for decades, played a major political role. Its leader, Idris of Libya, gained support among many tribes and communities. On December 24, 1951, Libya officially became independent as the United Kingdom of Libya. It was one of the first African nations to gain independence after World War II. King Idris became the country's first monarch. At independence, Libya was one of the poorest nations in the world. Large parts of the population were illiterate. Infrastructure was weak, and many people lived in poverty. The government relied heavily on foreign aid from Britain and the United States. But everything changed in 1959. Huge oil reserves were discovered beneath the Libyan desert. Oil transformed Libya almost overnight. Foreign companies rushed into the country, and oil exports generated enormous wealth. Roads, schools, hospitals, and modern buildings appeared rapidly. Libya became one of Africa's richest oil-producing nations. Despite growing wealth, many Libyans believed the benefits were unfairly distributed. Corruption increased and resentment toward Western influence grew. Military officers and Arab nationalists criticized King Idris for allowing foreign military bases and maintaining close ties with Western powers. At the same time, Arab nationalism was spreading across the Middle East, inspired by Egyptian leader Gamal Abdel Nasser. Young Libyan officers admired Nasser's anti-colonial ideas and wanted radical political change. One of those officers was a young army captain named Muammar Gaddafi. Born in a Bedouin family near Sirte in 1942, Gaddafi grew up hearing stories about Libyan resistance hero Omar Mukhtar. He became deeply influenced by Arab nationalism and opposed monarchy and Western influence. On September 1, 1969, while King Idris was abroad receiving medical treatment, Gaddafi and a group of military officers launched a bloodless coup. The monarchy collapsed almost instantly. At just 27 years old, Gaddafi became Libya's new leader. He abolished the monarchy, expelled foreign military bases, and declared Libya a republic. Massive oil revenues allowed Gaddafi to introduce free education, healthcare, housing programs, and infrastructure projects. Many Libyans initially welcomed him as a revolutionary hero. Gaddafi promoted a political philosophy called the Third International Theory, explained in his Green Book. He claimed Libya would follow neither capitalism nor communism but a unique system based on direct popular rule. In reality, Gaddafi gradually created an authoritarian state centered around his personal power. Political parties were banned. Critics were imprisoned, tortured, or executed. Secret police monitored the population, and opposition movements were crushed both inside and outside Libya. At the same time, Gaddafi became internationally famous and controversial. He funded revolutionary groups abroad, supported anti-colonial movements, and positioned himself as a champion of Arab and African unity. However, Western countries accused Libya of sponsoring terrorism. Libya's relations with the United States and Europe deteriorated badly during the 1980s. Tensions eventually led to military confrontation, sanctions, and international isolation. The next phase of Libya's history would bring bombings, dictatorship, rebellion, and civil war, ultimately ending Gaddafi's four-decade rule in violent chaos. By the 1970s and 1980s, Muammar Gaddafi had become one of the most controversial leaders in the world. In Libya, he presented himself as a revolutionary hero fighting imperialism and Western domination. To many foreign governments, however, he appeared unpredictable, dangerous, and deeply authoritarian. Gaddafi ruled Libya through a system he called the Jamahiriya, meaning state of the masses. Officially, Libya had no president or traditional government. Gaddafi claimed ordinary people ruled through local committees and congresses. In reality, power remained concentrated around him, his family, loyal military officers, and security forces. Oil wealth made Libya one of Africa's richest countries. Education and healthcare improved dramatically compared to the monarchy period. Literacy rates increased, roads expanded, and many citizens received state support for housing and services. But political freedom almost disappeared. Opposition parties were banned, journalists were silenced, and critics faced imprisonment or execution. Public hangings and televised punishments created fear throughout society. Many Libyans learned never to criticize the government openly. Gaddafi also developed an enormous cult of personality. His image appeared everywhere on posters, buildings, television broadcasts, and school materials. He wore elaborate military uniforms and frequently delivered long speeches attacking the West, Israel, and Arab governments he considered corrupt. Internationally, Gaddafi attempted to expand Libyan influence across Africa and the Middle East. He funded revolutionary movements, guerrilla groups, and anti-colonial organizations in several countries. Some viewed him as a supporter of liberation struggles, while others accused him of fueling violence and instability. During the Cold War, Libya often aligned itself against the United States and Western powers. Relations with America worsened dramatically under U.S. President Ronald Reagan. In 1986, tensions exploded after the United States accused Libya of supporting terrorist attacks, including a bombing at a Berlin nightclub frequented by American soldiers. The United States launched airstrikes on Tripoli and Benghazi in April 1986. American warplanes bombed military and government targets, including areas connected to Gaddafi himself. Dozens of people were killed. Gaddafi survived, but the attack intensified hostility between Libya and the West. Then came one of the most infamous events linked to Libya, the Lockerbie bombing. In 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing 270 people. Investigators accused Libyan intelligence agents of carrying out the bombing. The disaster shocked the world. The United Nations imposed severe sanctions on Libya during the 1990s. International flights were restricted, economic pressure increased, and Libya became politically isolated. Sanctions damaged the economy and made daily life harder for ordinary Libyans. Over time, Gaddafi attempted to repair relations with the international community. In the early 2000s, Libya accepted responsibility for the Lockerbie bombing and agreed to compensation payments for victims' families. Gaddafi also abandoned programs related to weapons of mass destruction. Western governments slowly reopened relations with Libya. International companies returned for oil deals, and foreign leaders visited Tripoli again. Some believed Libya was moving toward greater cooperation with the world. But beneath the surface, anger inside the country continued growing. Many Libyans remained frustrated by corruption, repression, unemployment, and lack of political freedom. Younger generations especially wanted change. In 2011, a wave of uprisings known as the Arab Spring spread across the Middle East and North Africa. Governments in Tunisia and Egypt were shaken by mass protests. Demonstrators demanded democracy, economic reform, and an end to dictatorship. Soon, protests erupted in Libya. Demonstrations began in the eastern city of Benghazi. Security forces responded violently, killing protesters and triggering nationwide outrage. The unrest rapidly escalated into armed rebellion. Large parts of eastern Libya fell under rebel control. Gaddafi vowed to crush the uprising and called opponents rats and traitors. His forces launched brutal counterattacks using tanks, artillery, and aircraft. As fighting intensified, fears grew that civilians in rebel-held cities would face massacres. The United Nations authorized military intervention to protect civilians. A NATO-led coalition launched airstrikes against Gaddafi's forces in March 2011. Countries including the United States, Britain, and France participated in the campaign. NATO air power severely weakened the Libyan military, allowing rebel forces to advance. Months of heavy fighting followed. Cities changed hands repeatedly, and the conflict devastated infrastructure across the country. Thousands were killed, while many more fled their homes. In August 2011, rebel fighters entered Tripoli. Gaddafi's government collapsed. The former dictator fled and went into hiding. On October 20th, 2011, fighters captured Gaddafi near his hometown of Sirte. Videos of the event spread rapidly across the world. Shortly afterward, he was killed under chaotic and violent circumstances. After 42 years in power, Muammar Gaddafi's rule had ended. Many Libyans celebrated the fall of dictatorship, believing a democratic future was finally possible. But the collapse of the regime also created a dangerous power vacuum. Weapons spread across the country, rival militias refused to disarm, and political divisions deepened. Instead of stability, Libya soon descended into years of conflict, fragmentation, and civil war. After the death of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, many people hoped Libya would finally become peaceful and democratic. But instead of unity, the country quickly descended into chaos. The collapse of Gaddafi's government left behind a massive power vacuum. During the revolution, thousands of fighters and militias had taken up arms against the regime. After victory, Many of these groups refused to surrender their weapons or obey a central government. Different militias controlled cities, oil facilities, airports, and roads. Tribal rivalries, ideological divisions, and regional conflicts intensified across the country. At first, Libya attempted to build a democratic political system. Elections were held in 2012, and a new government called the General National Congress took power. Many citizens were hopeful. However, the government struggled to control armed groups. Assassinations, kidnappings, and clashes became common. Extremist organizations also exploited the instability. Militant groups linked to al-Qaeda and later ISIS established footholds in parts of Libya, especially after state institutions weakened. By 2014, Libya had effectively split into rival governments. One government operated from Tripoli in western Libya, while another emerged in the east around Tobruk and Benghazi. Armed coalitions supported each side, turning political disagreements into full-scale civil war. A major figure during this period was Khalifa Haftar, a military commander who launched campaigns against Islamist militias in eastern Libya. Haftar's forces, known as the Libyan National Army, gradually gained control over much of eastern Libya. Meanwhile, western Libya remained controlled by rival militias and political factions centered around Tripoli. Foreign powers became deeply involved in the conflict. Countries such as Turkey, Qatar, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and Russia supported different factions with weapons, funding, military advisors, or mercenaries. Libya became a battleground for regional and international influence. The country's vast oil wealth made the conflict even more important globally. Libya possesses some of Africa's largest oil reserves, and control over oil fields and export terminals became a major objective for rival groups. Ordinary civilians suffered greatly during the war. Cities were destroyed by fighting and airstrikes. Thousands of people were killed, while many more were displaced from their homes. Migrants traveling through Libya toward Europe also faced horrific conditions, including human trafficking, abuse, and detention camps. One of the most dangerous moments came in 2019 when Haftar's forces launched a major offensive to capture Tripoli. Heavy battles erupted around the capital for more than a year. Drones, artillery, and foreign-backed fighters intensified the conflict. Civilian neighborhoods were repeatedly damaged. But in 2020, a ceasefire agreement was finally reached after international pressure increased. The ceasefire reduced large-scale fighting and opened the door for political negotiations. The United Nations supported efforts to unify Libya's divided institutions and organize national elections. A temporary government of national unity was formed to bridge divisions between East and West. However, political tensions remained unresolved. Elections planned for 2021 were postponed because of disagreements over laws, candidates, and security concerns. Rival administrations and armed factions continued competing for power. Despite ongoing instability, many Libyans continue demanding peace, economic recovery, and national unity. Today, Libya remains a country of enormous potential but deep uncertainty. Its oil reserves provide immense wealth, yet corruption and division prevent many citizens from benefiting fully. Infrastructure damaged by war still requires rebuilding. Armed groups continue influencing politics, while foreign powers maintain interests inside the country. At the same time, Libya's people possess a strong sense of identity shaped by centuries of survival through invasion, colonization, dictatorship, and war. From the ancient civilizations of Cyrene and Leptis Magna, to the resistance of Omar Mukhtar, to the rise and fall of Gaddafi, Libya's history has been marked by resilience, struggle, and transformation. The future of Libya remains uncertain, but its story continues to shape North Africa and the wider world.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for daily updates.